right now.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Deepak, as usual. Great collaboration and friendship that we have together on that project of consciousness studies. Before I start, I really love how you did it last time, just to have literally a moment of silence together, just to arrive in your space, kind of centered yourself. So you can take a breath and close your eyes and just, or keep them open as you like. Just acknowledging that you are here, that you have dedicated this precious time to learn something new, to be curious. Maybe there's another intention that you have for tonight. And gently coming back by taking a breath if you like, and opening your eyes, of course. If you want to, you can also hear things with your closed eyes. I always say on my talks, you can take any position you like and you can fall asleep. I'm very sure that any information that is supposed to reach you will reach you in any state of consciousness. So I'm super excited to give that talk today. I had a lot of joy preparing the slides and a lot of frustration because there's just so much to say about it and it's impossible to cover it in 1 hour. I hope I'm going to fit in 1 hour as well. And here are the topics that I'm going to try to cover. So first of all, I would like to say why this is my perspective on psychedelic consciousness, on psychedelics, where I come from, how it started for me, and a small story about where it all started, particularly with the focus on Europe, because many of us don't know a lot of history of psychedelic state and psychedelic substances, shamanism in that land that we call Europe right now. Very briefly, I will talk about some icons and also some forgotten icons and forgotten wise people. And then I will go to kind of 3 different expressions of psychedelic culture. The first one is festivals, raves, and counterculture, which some people call recreational use. I will try to show you that it's a little bit more than recreational use in some cases. Then I will talk a bit about music, ritual, and ceremony, and finally psychedelic assisted therapy, and I'm going to leave quite a bit this last topic open so that you can ask your questions. So my perspective is very important. You don't have to read all of that. I just want to show you that again, it's very much my perspective. So first of all, it goes through the lens of my experience, where I come from, what education I have taken, all sorts of like different directions. So just briefly, at the moment, I'm an embodiment guide and psychedelic assisted therapy facilitator. I facilitate legal psychedelic sessions in collaboration with psychiatrists. And I have my own clients, I lead groups as well, but I'm also a scientist. I have PhD in cell and tissue engineering. And I also have wisdom tradition, or I don't want to call it shamanic, but it's a wisdom tradition lineage as well that I'm following, so I'm kind of coming from that perspective. And I would love to tell you actually about my own experience, because I feel psychedelic world is a lot about experience. There's science, of course, and there's all these wonderful things, but It's the word of subjectivity. It's a word of experience, our individual experience. So for me, it all started in 1982. I was born in Poland, in a very, very rural area of Poland, full of forests. So my sort of first spiritual psychedelic experiences, which I really remember up to psychedelic states, not experiences without substances, which I still remember until these days, were actually in forests, in the forests of Polish land. So believe it or not, at the time when I was little, when I was 6, 7 years old, it was okay for the kid to just go to the forest for 5 hours by myself, basically, and just roam around. I would get a tea in a bottle from my grandma and a little bit sandwich, and then I would just go and talk to plants and so on. I was dreaming, of course. I was dreaming there in the forest, fantasizing, and clearly there were relationships there with my family, which have sort of that have connected then me to some way of being in my nervous system that we call trauma as well. And in 2007, I actually left Poland, and travel was really something that shaped a lot of my experience, and have also perpetuated, which was in the beginning anxiety, into like really deep clinical depressions. And depression is also an altered state of consciousness. It is this kind of underground realm which we sometimes also encounter in psychedelic consciousness. And this led me to search basically for healing. With really some desperate times. I have been very lucky to arrive also in Switzerland, have support from a clinical part, but also a lot of wise people around, and I have learned during that time a lot, educating myself, but also from my own experience. And in 2021, my psychiatrist have offered me ketamine-assisted therapy. So up till now, I probably had 60 plus sessions of ketamine-assisted therapy, which is extremely helpful in working with depressions in combination with psychotherapy. So I had infusions, but most of my ketamine infusions, I will talk about ketamine very briefly later, but more so a low dosage of ketamine where it's still possible to talk and go through the psychotherapeutic process. And this is extremely important in psychedelic therapy, to combine a substance with a relationship, therapeutic relationship. To that came the somatic practices. So also this is my huge interest, psychedelics and body consciousness. I'll have some talk also later next year about that. And yeah, here I am now with all this knowledge and experience, sharing and still learning what's next. I'm very excited about it, ready or not. So I'm gonna drop a bit this bomb here. Body-mind dualism is a little bit old school, and I'm talking here about the name Psychonaut by itself, which is a beautiful name. I'm not sure exactly in which year. It was sometime in the 80s, I think, that it was kind of came into the cultural use. That doesn't reflect necessarily 100% what is happening with us when we are under the influence of psychedelic consciousness and psychedelic substances. So, what makes a psychedelic and any other experience? There are those 4 sort of steps. The first step happens very much in your unconscious. So things that are happening when you take a substance, let's say psychedelic substance, LSD, there are things happening inside your body. And this will be increased maybe blood pressure, maybe you start to breathe more. There's a lot of things happening underground that most of us would not be conscious about. You can train yourself to actually notice those movements. From that, we perceive that kind of movement in our body as a certain sensation, as a certain emotion as well, which leads us to a certain perception of our experience, and based on that, we make a concept on the reality or on the experience. So I just give here a small example. So there's a movement in my chest area, there's something happening if I'm conscious to actually feel it inside of me. There's a felt sense of movement in my heart area. I feel the warmth on the blanket on my skin. I perceive it as self-love, and therefore my belief is that I'm worth love, right? So I want you to keep that in mind. These are those kind of 4 important stages. And this young man here, psychotherapist and transpersonal psychologist, in this book he is also interested in Taoism. He said that this consciousness is embodied is a fact that many psychologists have missed or often omitted. Forgetting the soma in the pursuit of the psyche, in order to move beyond this, the tired dualistic models, the so-called mind-body problem, and work towards recognizing a body-mind continuum, the term psychosomanautics was utilized. And I love that term. It's a little bit long, so maybe someone will come up with something else. I don't have anything against the term psychonauts, but I just want to kind of challenge you a little bit to broaden that perspective. It's not just about our psyche, it's not just about higher consciousness, but there is a depth inside of our bodies that is affected by those states. So therefore, I will give you a psychosomanautic perspective on psychedelic consciousness. And let's dive a little bit very, very, very long time ago. I think James last week also gave some history. I probably give you a little bit broadened history, not an alternative history, but a bit broadened. So a bit of a storytelling. So once upon a time, there was a garden, and there was a tree in that garden, and there were various fruits and herbs and fungi. And there were those different creatures that have visited the trees, and they have visited the plants and fungi, and sometimes just by accident have ingested something new, just for fun. It's a very cute movie. This was the first bear to take psychedelic mushrooms in history. And why do I say that? Well, then in that garden appeared those weird monkeys, or weird apes, or whatever our ancestors were. And this is just magnificent art by Alex Gray that many of you perhaps are familiar with. He's an artist and a psychonaut, and here he shows Adam and Eve in the front of this tree of knowledge of good and bad, and they are eating, in this case, apples. But this gentleman, Terence McKenna, who is an ethnobotanist and mystic, and really a sort of a wise of the psychedelic states, have coined that stoned apes theory, where he sort of takes us into a bit of a thought if perhaps psychedelics would have made us human, or it was one of the things that have made us human. Right now, this theory has been still not proven. There was no evidence sort of found anywhere. It's going to be difficult, I guess, to find some evidence really that this was the case. But I can very much see that. And we also know now from the psychedelic research that they have incredible effect on our brain biology and much more, of course. They improve processing speed, memory, enhance creativity, problem solving, they change our perspective, and they produce a persistent change in one's worldview. So it could be that perhaps they have also contributed in some way to who we are today. And where is it really started with the psychonautics? In Europe, it started in the caves, actually. So these pictures come from the caves of Lascaux in France from about 10 to 15,000 years ago. And what you see here on the right is what is considered an evidence of the earliest shamanism or earliest shamanic experiences, or what we would call now psychedelic experiences. We don't know if they ingested the substances, but the darkness itself is sufficient to induce psychedelic experiences. And right now there are very popular dark rooms where you go for 4 days or 5 days and you're closed there, and people record basically, seeing shapes and going through pretty intense altered states of consciousness. This picture here, just to explain, it's called Bison Woman. Most likely it depicts the experience of a shaman who was a female because of that triangle here that represents the womb. And basically it's in a concept of the shape-shifting. So there is a bison here and a kind of a cat, maybe a lion. And in shamanism, there's this concept of becoming one with the nature, with the animals, and shape-shifting, and kind of melting with the power of the particular animal. So darkness always available for us with a good eye shade. The Dionysian mysteries in Bacchanalia. So Dionysus is a Greek god of wine and ecstasy, and much more. And again, very long time, around 3000 BC. There were those what we would call orgies. Doesn't mean that there was sexuality involved there, most likely, but not necessarily. Where people would meet, drink wine, that definitely was spiked with psychoactive substances, and they would celebrate. And that celebration, that dancing, music, being together, would bring them in the altered states of consciousness, of psychedelic consciousness. We know also a lot about Pythias. Oracle of Delphi is a temple in Greece from about 2000 BC, probably much earlier than that. Originally, those, again, women have been priestesses of Gaia, of basically Mother Earth, that's where it comes from, which was then, I said, colonized by the worshippers of Apollo. It became a temple of Apollo. But it's again believed that those women who have basically helped very important people in the country and from abroad to fix certain problems or find solutions to certain problems, that they have ingested some psychedelic gases, most likely ethylene from inside the earth, which would put them in a psychedelic state. And the answers they would give obviously are not kind of answers you would expect, okay, what should I have for dinner today? But they were talking in a more poetic language. So it was more language or answers that have to be then sort of translated into actual action. So these were oracles, and it was working until 400 Common Era. And Eleusinian mysteries, again, Greece. These were basically mass initiations where almost for sure people have, again, ingested psychedelic substances which were found in the vessels. That they were coming from barley, from the mushroom that ergot that grows on the barley and is similar to LSD. We don't know a lot exactly what is happening there because there were mysteries, so people were not able to talk about it. But they were huge. There were thousands and thousands of people that were taking part in those initiations over hundreds of years again. And I would love to talk about those topics. I would wish that I have more time to tell you a bit more about that. And this one, which is not often talked about, the folks medicine in Europe, commonly known as witchcraft. Here, a lot of substances were used by the healers, not only women, which there were also male witches. Lots of substances with hallucinogenic properties for the purpose of divination and healing. There are some wonderful books, and here is me. I actually come from the region that is very famous for witches in Poland, so I consider myself modern witch too. Yeah. So that was the history. We have never met those people, but there are some people that we remember quite well. I love this art by this man Nicholas Rosenfeld. So these were a lot of these people were covered by gems in his previous talk, and these are people from scientists to musicians to philosophers to writers, mystics, etc., etc. And these are usually the people that are shown in the conversations or in the history of psychedelics. As you can see, it's all men. Therefore, I really want to bring up also those that have been forgotten. And there is a wonderful book here that I left on women and psychedelics and their contribution to psychonautics and psychedelic consciousness research. And I just named a few of them. Maria Sabina is very often also depicted and often one of the few women that are known as those that were important for psychedelics. It's a Mexican curandera. I will talk about her a little bit more. Valentina Wasson was actually a wife of a man who kind of researched Maria Sabina, and she was the one that was interested in, or the first that was investigating use of mushrooms in Mexico. Anna Shulgin, who is with her husband, have synthesized, they were both chemists, synthesized hundreds of substances over many, many years, and they have all tested them on themselves, and they wrote diaries. I mean, it's an incredible amount of knowledge that they have been gathered. They're all very interesting. Rosemary Woodruff Leary, she's a wife of Timothy Leary that you might know very much from LSD science and culture. This lady here is a kind of matriarch of ayahuasca community in, I think, in Colombia. So there are much more people, shamans who will never be noted, who are there, and they have provided the service, and they provided their life basically for studying psychedelics. Just looking at the time. And there are also those not unexpected icons that we see all around in our culture. And I wanted to play that because I find it so cute. So Lewis Carroll wrote this book, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and apparently it was inspired by his trip with some psychedelic substances.
Tastes like cherry tart, custard, pineapple, roast turkey. Goodness! But goodness knows what this will do. Whoa, 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 whoa! Oh, no, no, not again.
A lot of fun to watch it. If you think about it, that it might be a psychedelic experience. So I just invite you now to take a stretch or take a breath or a sip of water just to digest a bit. If there's a burning question, please ask. Otherwise, we have a discussion time for afterwards. Okay. So I'm going to come to the first types of psychonautics, which I believe it was the recreational use of psychedelic substances or mind-altering substances. I think it was the first kind of psychonautics before ceremonies and everything else. So when I talk about recreational use, it's the use of substances beyond kind of health spaces, so beyond psychedelic assisted therapy or beyond ceremonies. So in more of a private setting, more of an open setting, not in a form of a particular ritual. I want to ask, maybe very briefly, how many of you have some experiences with psychedelic substances? You don't have to say. Most of us. Cool. Yeah. And how many of you have their first experiences outside of kind of health space ceremony? A few. Okay. Interesting. So I want to bring here a very important point connected to psychonautics and psychedelic substances, and this is this affinity of counterculture, revolution, and sort of rebellion, let's say, culture, and just want to quickly say what counterculture is so that we have an idea. A counterculture is a culture whose values and norms of behavior differ substantially from those of mainstream society. Sometimes dramatically opposed to mainstream culture's mores. A counterculture movement expresses the ethos and aspirations of specific population during a well-defined era. When oppositional forces reach critical mass, countercultures can trigger dramatic cultural changes. And this is what happened, bless you, this is what happened in the 60s and 70s. Obviously, then it went a bit wrong. And perhaps what is happening also now with the renaissance, so-called renaissance of psychedelics in our culture. And I'm talking about this in the context of the recreational use because that's often very, very connected. It's very connected. The counterculture kind of a use on festivals and in private gatherings, it's very connected to that kind of more rebellion behavior or consciousness. And the woman who is investigating and looking at that a lot is Chiara Baldini. She's also a scholar and a producer of Boom Festival. I will talk about it in the morning. Super interesting person. And she's also one of the writers in that Psychedelic Mysteries of Feminine that you will also find on the table. So on the left here you have a picture from the Boom Festival, which is takes place in Portugal, and it's basically the biggest festival of psychedelic culture. Burning Man, many of you might be also familiar. It's happening in the US on the desert with a lot of arts installations. And here in Switzerland, we also have Burning Mountain. And it's really places where you can be yourself. You can kind of express whatever you are and whoever you are, and it's completely invited, right, in the norm. And I'm just gonna stop this. And I'm bringing those particular festivals where obviously psychedelics are consumed because they have also very particular values. So it's not just, not like, nothing against Street Parade, I love Street Parade, but it has a little bit different commercial taste. And those festivals, they don't have sponsors, they're completely covered from funding and from tickets. And they are really taking into consideration those kind of values: alternative culture, active participation, creativity, interdependence, peace, love, oneness, social awareness, and sustainability. And they, Chiara Baldini, she also talks about it a lot. It reminds me those old times raves from Bacchanalia and Dionysius, where people are just drinking and dancing and just being together. And there's a fantastic study that I would love to also show here, a paper that was actually looking at the experiences of people on those festivals. They might be really amazing, they might be really transformational, and they might be very challenging. What is beautiful on those in those places is there are always tents or places where volunteers take care of basically anyone who needs help because of bad trip or whatever, you know, is difficult for them. And I'm making a bridge here slowly towards a ceremony. Music is absolutely essential for any psychonauts. I imagine many of you, if not all of you, have experienced music during their journeys. In that paper here, they call it the hidden therapists. So now there's more and more research also done that investigate what type of music and how and what type of playlists correlate the best with psychedelic assisted therapy. They are amazing artists that really build music experiences that help to trip. One of them is East Forest that we played just before we started the lecture, and we play later on. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful, one of my favorite. And here's a very interesting study, so I'm going to try to quickly not go too much into the details, but just to show you something. So what it shows here is like those categories: drug intensity, how intense the psychedelic was. It's from the assisted psychedelic assisted therapy. The music that they used, if they liked it, if they resonated with the music, and if they what was the openness of to the music. And here there are different outcomes of that psychedelic assisted therapy. And wherever you see a yellow, it means that it was positively affecting. The stars means it was significant in terms of science, or significant. And those two, decreased depression, mystical experience, free actually, and insightfulness, they were all affected by music. What is interesting that, for example, for decreasing depression, the drug intensity didn't have effect, I mean, in that particular study. So the music was correlated with decreased depression for people after the psychedelic assisted therapy, but drug didn't have, the amount of drug or intensity of the experience, psychedelic experience, didn't. So that's also fascinating to know it's not just about the substance. And I'm making now a bridge to ritual and ceremony. quote again this lady, Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is an indigenous person from North America and is a scientist of reciprocity. I will talk about reciprocity a little bit later. And what is ceremony? So she says, the ceremony focuses attention so that attention becomes intention. If you stand together and profess a thing before your community, it holds you accountable. Ceremonies transcend the boundaries of the individual and resonate beyond the human realm. These acts of reverence are powerfully pragmatic. These are ceremonies that magnify life. And to me, it's really beautifully embracing really what what ceremony is, and therefore also psychedelic ceremony. So first of all, it brings you in a specific place and time with specific group of people. I would say community is already two. Community might be also you yourself and a medicine. And it brings your attention towards one particular idea or intention. So it's an intention of healing. I'm focusing in that space and time all my attention on that thing. I desire healing. And it makes you accountable in the front of the community, but also it transcends the boundaries of the individual. So not only you are taking in things from within your own resources, but you have the whole community that holds you in that experience. So therefore they're extremely important, they're very powerful, and they are important for passage of rites or rites of passage, or to transform us from one state of being into the next one. Wedding is a ceremony as well, right? So just to summarize a little bit, what can we bring into ceremony? How can we trip? And there are not only substances. Physiological states. Not a lot of people know that when we are menstruating as women, we sort of go into a slightly altered state of consciousness. I even found, that's really funny, there is something called psychosis menstrualis, where women are actually going into psychotic states in menstruation. I didn't know that about it. Of course, psychosis, again, it's a psychedelic state. Darkness, which I talked about before. Breath and sexuality. Breath work is very well known and used for inducing altered states of consciousness. Drums, dance and music. And of course, plants, fungi, animals, parts of animals, for example, bufo, certain fish, and synthetic psychedelics that we know since not a very long time, actually, comparing to all of that was used before synthetic psychedelics. And I had to take her. She's also here with my two grandmothers and another teacher from Mazatecan community that I was working with. This is Maria Sabina, and Maria Sabina is this woman from that passed away, of course, now, from mountains in Oaxaca in Mexico, very remote location. And in the 70s, or end of 60s, 70s, beginning 70s, she was sort of discovered by Gordon Watson and Valentina Watson. And they have published this article that became sort of extremely popular to show, okay, there's this shaman who provides healing with those psychedelic mushrooms. And a lot of very famous people have traveled into that remote little village, very, very simple people with a very simple life, and sort of affected not only the life of Maria Sabina, but everyone else who has lived in that place. And this is a very dear topic to me. Many of us are right now have an opportunity to go into the ceremony with indigenous people, whether it's an ayahuasca somewhere in the jungle, or there are people also coming here to Switzerland to provide basically this medicine. And those two words, cultural appropriation and reciprocity, super difficult words, but I would love that you remember it if it doesn't tell you anything. Cultural appropriation is basically going somewhere, taking whatever gifts or whatever wealth they have. In the case of shamans and indigenous people, it's their medicines, right? And basically consuming it and not giving anything back, and not appreciating, not acknowledging that it comes from those communities. And I feel that we have a lot of work still to do to really appreciate what gift we are receiving from those places that have also very tragically suffered a lot from our Western culture, back in the old days and also now. And there's another thing, reciprocity, which is a sort of a polarity to appropriation, and that's the term that comes from the indigenous people, and basically means keeping a balance. So it's an idea of exchanging those resources that we have, and because we are all connected. The picture shows a bit those two kind of faces. On one side is actually, I think, some scientists, so probably pointing towards pharma companies that are now crazy looking for another magic drug to heal us all, sometimes without really giving anything back to the places where that knowledge came from. And again, there is also a book about psychedelic justice. Veladas. I want to show you the video that comes from the documentary about Maria Sabina from 1978. Actually, not so much to show you what was done here, but to show you that those ceremonies that we often consider very glamorous in our days, so to wear beautiful clothes and crystals and beautiful fragrances and flowers and all that, very often come from very simple background, very simple background. And I just want you to, for a moment, feel into how it was for those people to welcome, I don't know, John Lennon in their little village, very simple life. And again, in that ceremony, psychedelic consciousness, the most important thing is a community that holds us together, and a community that shares a particular culture, which we are now learning because we lost it all, mostly because of Christianization of Europe. So veladas are basically ceremonies with psychedelic mushrooms that grow there. This is Maria Sabina. And they were done all by night. For many hours, people would come here, come there for healing.
Señores San Pedro, señores San Todos,
So you see, not a very kind of glamorous setting, but what those people also have is an extreme respect towards the medicine as well, towards the Niños Santos, they call it, the holy children, so the mushrooms. So those people would not take psychedelic mushrooms because they are bored and they have just some time to kill, and then, you know, they are only taking it with a lot of respect and a lot of reverence in the moments when they really, really need it, when there's a need for the healing.
May I ask, what's the connection with Christianity there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Mexico was colonized, right? And with the colonization came the Christianity. So what happens is that, I mean, those people were basically forced to take the Christianity. They had their own beliefs and their own ceremonies, their own religion. And what they did what they could, which is that they mixed basically the symbols of Christianity and the symbols of their previous beliefs system. And these are all symbols in the end of the day, right? I would love to talk about each of those, what I show here, for the whole hour. There's so much to say, so I just kind of give you these keywords about famous set and setting. The first column talks about relationship a lot, the trust, which is very important in the space of any ceremony, but yeah, actually any trip, preferably. Curiosity and presence is very important to kind of let ourselves to fall into experience. Music and singing, all the beautiful things that we have around, and intention, connection, our own connection with medicine, and offering perhaps something after we receive the gifts, offer something back to the community or to the world. I wanted to show you in the next one or two slides a little bit, for those who have never experienced any psychedelic state, or for those who maybe want to remind themselves, how is it for me? So these are sort of the psychedelics that we know, some of the psychedelics, but the main psychedelic groups that we know by now. The mushrooms, the psychedelic mushroom, psilocybin, DMT, that is part of ayahuasca, 5-MeO-DMT from bufo, and then there are synthetic ones like LSD, kind of more of atypical psychedelics, and this is because of the chemistry, MDMA and mescaline from the cactus. MDMA is synthetic, of course. And they are also dissociatives, ketamine and deliriants. And not many people consider, actually in that paper, THC was not considered psychedelic. And my experience is it's very psychedelic, and actually it's used in the psychedelic assisted therapy because in many places it's legal. So it opens us up. So there are wonderful things in the internet. If you have never tripped, you can sort of have some kind of a feeling, how is it to trip? And there are people who create visuals. They cannot give you, of course, the feeling inside your body, but the visual and then auditory. trips that you can watch, and you can see how that works. This is from symmetric vision, a way of showing how one perceives reality and what one hears under influence of DMT, a part of ayahuasca. Oops. So it's a normal state. And you start to hear something is changing in the auditory perception. Things are starting to wave. Then you start to see patterns. And reality looks completely different, slowly. And then you're going somewhere, which is very much not like here. And this pitch voice is also part of the experience very often. People say that it feels, this world feels more real than this world in that space. I also felt that many times. This feels more real than the reality that we have. If you are interested to dig a little bit deeper into that subject, I really recommend that website, Effect Index, which is basically a project that takes the thousands and thousands of journals of trips and then tries to categorize all the experiences in some form of categories. So this was an example of a good trip, and this would be an example of a bad trip. So it's very much like horror movie, sort of scary. I just imagine being there and it feels real. So these things can happen anywhere. They will happen for sure if you take the deliriums, for example, the datura. So please don't. Normally, just don't. If you have not experience, I mean, people have really lots of problems after trips like that, without guidance and without really being very grounded into their own reality.
Which ones are deliriums?
Datura, for example. The scopolamines. We can talk about it later. Yeah, just don't. Okay, so just for a moment, I'm arriving slowly to the last part. So again, if you want to just take a breath. Still good with time. Am I running? Mm-hmm. No. Good. So psychedelic assisted therapy. This for me summarizes basically what psychedelics do to us in like a very holistic way. Stanislav Grof is one of the fathers of the modern psychedelic state. I really love this man from his knowledge, but also from his big heart. He is a psychiatrist. He worked in the 70s with LSD with his clients, with his patients. In US, he's originally, I think, Czech. And he's a founder of transpersonal psychology and holotropic breath work, so the way of inducing altered states of consciousness with the breath. And he said, psychedelics function more or less as non-specific catalysts and amplifiers of the psyche. What does it mean? So psychedelics, I always explained in a way, psychedelics open us a little bit of a door to a different state of being for us. But what we're going to do with that being on the other side of the veil, it's up to a lot of factors. So clearly, of course, psychedelics are inducing certain biological responses, very often working, for example, on serotonin receptors, can make us happy, but that's not the only thing that is healing us. There's so much more to that. It's a relationship that is important to the medicine, to the therapist or the community. It's music, it's the space, it's the way you're feeling, the way you're prepared, and the way you're integrating. And a lot of clients that are coming to us, and we are working with clients that had issues with their mental health for a very long time. It's basically until now it's considered a last resort treatment. And I'm talking about psilocybin and MDMA that we are using. Ketamine is a little bit more open, but mostly for the people that have done other medication, have done psychotherapy, and things are not working. They have that expectation that they will take psilocybin and they're going to be fine right away. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. And it's not like that. It's not sort of not that kind of headache pill mechanism of action. So what, in very briefly, what psychedelics do, what I said, they open that gate. So we are normally operating in so-called secondary consciousness. So here, as we are, with the parts of us, with me called Kasia, that has some certain experiences and habits, I'm operating mainly in the secondary consciousness. And there is also primary consciousness that operates in us as well. It's a consciousness of our body. And the consciousness that we know from the sleep, from dreaming, from infant consciousness, people who don't remember that, things like sensory deprivation, the states of flow, creative flow. And this primary consciousness is basically a state of consciousness where we are extremely flexible and open. So again, you can imagine that the drugs are opening that gate to the flexibility, but it can go in any direction. I mean, it can go in the direction of beautiful healing experience, but also in very challenging and very traumatic experiences, depending on a setting. So if you remember this first picture from what makes experience, embodiment, sensation, perception, and conception, what psychedelics do, they basically push our consciousness towards this primary consciousness, so more flexible, more open, more childlike consciousness, where things can emerge and new things can emerge. And in our normal state, we operate in the space of conception. So that's who I am, that's what I believe about myself, that's my habits, that's my skills. So how does the psychedelic assisted therapy work with my experience in Switzerland? So there are two ways of doing a psychedelic assisted therapy. It can be individual, one-to-one. This one in Switzerland is not covered by the insurance. The insurance system is anyway a little bit of a complicated at the moment. There's no model really to cover that, because it's not 1 hour of visit with a psychiatrist. It requires many more hours. Or it can be held in the groups. We do both of them. I find the most powerful experiences in the group. Again, because of that community that holds us and that peers that can meet after the ceremony, they can exchange, they can kind of grow together. And the idea is always this, usually very, very similar. So we have a person that comes in, fills up the questionnaire, so goes through an interview with the psychiatrist, and then this questionnaire is sent to the Ministry of Health, and the experts there decide whether this person is supposed to get that treatment or not, if it's a right person. And then there's a preparation session, so there are usually several sessions with me as a therapist that are not right before the medicine sessions, but for us to get to know each other, for me to understand a little bit the history of that person. I work somatically, so also to understand the body of that person. But again, trust is something that is extremely important, that we create that relationship together. Just before the medicine session, the day before, we have a preparation session where all of the group comes together and they get to know each other for the first time. They can ask questions, they can basically say their intentions, see the room. Then there's a medicine session where in our setup people take MDMA or psilocybin at the same time. So some people might take psilocybin and some MDMA. Usually it's between 5 to 8 people in the group and 2 facilitators. It's an 8-hour session where people spend some time by themselves and some time where I would approach them and support them in whatever process they have. Then we have some food at the end and a little coming down together. And then they are held on Fridays, so on Mondays we meet for the first integration session. And then there are 2 more integration sessions which are after a month and after 2 months, and that's a cycle. And these cycles are repeated 4 times in a year because a person, a patient, a client receives a license to get the medicines for 1 year. It can be, of course, extended. So normally people would have every 3 months a session, or they would start the cycle. Of course, they don't have to, they can skip one. Some people stay for many, some just come once. Depends on the client. Usually 1 is not sufficient, really.
With which organization do you do that?
It's a Praxis for Humanistic Psychotherapy. So there are about, I think, 80 psychiatrists, so doctors that have an opportunity to, or they have permission to hold those psychedelic sessions. And that these are usually either hospitals or clinics or private practices. So I work in a private practice with the psychiatrist, basically as a co-facilitator.
Could I ask, how do you decide on the length of time between the integration sessions?
This is something that comes from basically previous experiences that have been gathered by people that have done that in Switzerland. So one of the people was first people actually who have received that exemption is a psychiatrist called Peter Gasse. He treats and treated a lot of people with LSD, and slowly there was the gathering of that experiences. There are some psychedelic groups that work also in a clinical setting. So basically this is based on the experience of what is the right way, or what would be the best way to do it, taking into consideration also resources that we have as therapists and what can be paid for people. So this is just some pictures from Peter Gasse that I just mentioned from that paper, or from the medicine days or substance day as we call it. So usually there are some elements of ceremony or ritual, but it's all kept quite, I would say, low-key. Everyone is welcome to bring anything they need. So it can be a teddy bear, it can be a cushion, to make yourself as comfortable as possible. everyone has their own space, and they only group only mainly interacts with each other in the second part of the trip. So after the peak of the substance, when there's a countdown, we start to exchange a little bit. And sometimes, particularly with MDMA, it might be that that contact between group participants is also desirable or brings effects, because MDMA really works as that heart-opening relational catalyzer. This is sort of a beautiful, I think, depiction of the psychedelic assisted therapy or psychedelic process from Rosalind Watts, who was working in a very famous psilocybin study at Imperial College London. That was one of the first studies that have received permission to happen. And she talks about that metaphor of the overground and then going into the oceans. So when you take the substance, the first important thing is to let go. You have to kind of let yourself to go and be guided by the experience. And you dive in, you connect to your body, feel whatever is felt, and then you encounter maybe some very difficult parts of yourself, very difficult experiences, but maybe you also find that pearl of wisdom, as she calls it. And then you can take this pearl and go above the water, so getting out of the psychedelic experience, and integrate that into the core of your essence, what she calls self, make meaning of that, and the intention, what am I going to do with that gift or that pearl in the future, for myself and for my community. Yeah, and often people, again, it's there's expectations. Often my clients ask, why is it taking so long? I thought I'm going to be already like fine after one session, and why is it not happening? And really, healing is not linear. We all know that. Healing of our body is not linear, and certainly not of our psyche. So I would say there are those kind of 4 steps in that psychedelic assisted therapy process. We have a psychedelic experience, and it might be that in that psychedelic experience we really found something that we have not expected, something that actually led us to have that problem with depression and anxiety. It's something that we have kind of we didn't want to see, we kind of hide it, and now suddenly it comes into our consciousness, and it creates destabilization. It creates sometimes also anxiety. It creates feeling of, oh my God, what am I doing here in this world? And in our culture, destabilization is not something we can allow ourselves. So people hate that, and they call it very often also bad trip. It's not a bad trip, it's life. We need to face something really difficult in order to integrate it. So integration is the process of making meaning out of it, and then the end is embodiment. So it goes so deep inside of us that it becomes basically invisible. We just live that new self. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is that we don't have that destabilization. We just come out and we feel just amazing, and we embody that. There might be experience and destabilization for many, many months, and there are those experiences happening also in psychedelic assisted therapy. Of course, there's a help of the therapist after that, as opposed to, for example, some of the ceremonial use. People come back from the jungle and they just don't feel right for a long time. Or sometimes there's a direct, so-called direct revelation, which means that we just change. Suddenly I stop drinking. I'm not drinking. I have drunk all my life. I'm not drinking. I don't have any need for drinking, and that really happens as well. How about the time? I'm going to skip this because I would like to have some discussion. Just to explain, I'm at the moment doing a training with Psychedelic Somatic Institute that is interested in particularly working with the nervous system, so not so much with the transcendental experiences, but with the nervous system regulation under influence of psychedelics. And we work with ketamine and cannabis because they're available much easier than the other psychedelics for broader scope. Yeah, now I just want to finish with this. No healer or substance heals anyone directly. They provide an experience representing the healing state which a person needs to choose to match and engage with. So in any psychedelic experience, any psychonautic experience, you're in the leading chair. The medicine is then there to support you, your spirit guides, however you want to call it, your therapies, but you are an active participant that chooses your direction. I came across this interesting thing. There is a channel on Telegram for harm reduction. So it's basically an AI, a bot, and you can type into Telegram at any point what's going on with you. I feel headache, and this AI is trained by people that work on that project to support you in having some answers, some first answers. It's really working. I have tried that. And I also have a space on Mighty Network where I'm gathering different psychedelic resources that have been supportive for me and interesting for me. You're very welcome also to join it. This I can say leave later, but with that, I'm super happy to finish and super excited to get your questions if there are any. Thank you very much.